Ladies and gentlemen, all rise for Judge Mental.
You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, esteemed colleagues and members of the public, we are here today to bring to action the trial of the current prison system. Several allegations have been brought against the prison system to argue that it does not succeed in its duration to rehabilitate inmates brought into its confinement. The defence will argue that, in fact, in the majority of cases, rehabilitation is successful. A case of this magnitude the public has never seen before, and the consequences, should the defence fail to convince us of the prison system's innocence, are mammoth, and the prison system will be completely reorganised. Similarly, the stakes will be high should they succeed. It will be seen that the prison system is fair, and that any failure to become rehabilitated falls squarely on the individual inmate in question. I would like to call upon the attorneys to stand. The attorney for the defence, and the attorney for the prosecution. The proceedings will begin with an opening from the defence, followed immediately by a counter-opening by the prosecution. I call this court to order. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are here as an unbiased witness to the case of the current prison system. My learned friend will try and use her research in a bid to convince you that the prison system is not meeting the needs of the current offenders. However, I implore you to look over all of the evidence provided, which I think will show that rehabilitation programs are in place for everyone, especially those with mental health issues. And in some large studies, prisons have been considered a place where people can make positive changes and that they can use in the real world.
Unfortunately, it is only in some cases that prison does more right than wrong. And so surely, a system like the current prison system is one that is neither beneficial to prisoners, regardless of their mental health, or to the wider community. The prison system is far too a larger one for us to gloss over the facts. In more cases than not, prison is unsuccessful in rehabilitating prisoners. So please, Your Honour, members of the jury, consider the evidence equally, and do not be swayed by the desire to avert change. Perhaps, in this case, it is needed.
Looking at the very beginning of the prison system, it appears that the main source of rehabilitation was solitary confinement, with an expectation of them doing silent contemplation and Bible study, which meant that they would be redeemed in the eyes of God. However, this is now a prehistoric way of rehabilitating, and whilst talking therapies, chemical castration and ECT have all been used, it now seems that psychodynamic theories are what are more common. These include aggression replacement therapy, alcohol-related violence programs, and substance abuse programs in the UK. All of these aim to give offenders the help they need to have the best chance in the real world.
Whilst my opponent appears to make a fair point, it was eventually found that prison was, and is not, as successful at rehabilitating prisoners as first thought. To substantiate this, I would like to call my first witness to the stand.
Sustained.
Ms. Cullen, could you please tell us the aims of your study?
In 2000, I wanted to assess the correctional rehabilitation of the US prison system, including policy, practice and prospects.
Why did you decide to take this upon yourself?
The idea of reform was first accepted in the early 1900s, which seemed a positive step towards the rehabilitation of prisoners. But after 70 years of having this new system in place, arguments started to arise around whether it was too lenient, and further analysis showed that rehabilitation could not be successful in the duration it was currently under, and therefore wasn't actually having a difference on recidivism.
So what conclusion did you come to?
From this assessment, it seems clear to me that the prison system needs a complete makeover, starting by redefining rehabilitation using new research and evidence, rather than having a system based on old-fashioned ideas that have had no impact on any crime statistics. In my opinion, this just shows that the prison system facilitates crime and has done so for a very long time.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
The prison system has reformed massively, especially since the turn of the century, and I believe the makeover my learned friend's witness speaks of has already occurred within our world. To explain this, I wish to call Draper to the stand.
Granted.
Please tell us about the results you found from the sports therapy in South African prison study.
When looking at the Fight with Insight programme in youth prisons in South Africa, we see that sport and cognitive behavioural therapy decreased the amount of recidivism in child and adolescent sex offenders who enrolled in the programme against those who didn't. The programme also showed an improvement in inter- and intra-personal skills in those enrolled in the scheme.
And do you think you could replicate this in other countries?
The positive effect of this programme, although culturally specific, suggests that it could be used in cultures similar to that of South Africa to yield similar results.
Objection.
On what grounds?
While it's admirable that my colleague considers a cultural evaluation of the study, which appears to be of limited positive benefit to the actual replication of the study, we should be open to other criticisms.
Sustained.
The age range of those studies was incredibly limited, and who's to say the older, more established individuals would show the same results? Also, what part does mental health play in this? It cannot be guaranteed that those with poor mental health will also be successfully rehabilitated. I feel that this evidence is not enough to withhold such a bold claim. I would like to bring to the stand a representative of the Berkeley Journal.
Granted.
You feel the most effective way of evaluating the success of prison rehabilitation is by considering the rates of parole and rehabilitation, yes?
Yes.
Could you tell us about this?
The most recent accounting by the CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, puts the total number of parole returnees at 93,279 of the total number that entered prison in 2007. These figures indicate that only a fraction of ex-prisoners are successfully restored to society, regardless of the underlying causes of recidivism. Yet for prisoners with severe mental illness, approximately 80% recidivate.
Okay, and particularly, how does this affect inmates with mental illness?
This journal suggests that prison is an extremely bad environment for those with mental illness. They found that the prison system in California is deeply flawed or even broken, especially in terms of dealing with mental illness. They found in particular the use of solitary confinement causes a decline in the mental health of offenders and argue that it should not be used as punishment. One study on the CDCR shows segregated inmates are prone to suicide. In 2003, 74% of all inmate suicides took place in administrative segregation. Cooper's study showed that prisoners who have never suffered a significant psychiatric disturbance in the past report worrisome psychiatric symptoms for the first time. They suggest the mental health system in prisons in California is in crisis and must be immediately overhauled. Reoffending rates amongst those with mental illness are extremely high. They even go as far to say, without a genuine attempt to treat the mental health behind bars, the CDCR may as well change its R from rehabilitation to recidivism to reflect more accurately its achievements.
So, to summarise, how would you say that this reflects on the current prison system?
It is clear that the current prison system facilitates criminal behaviour.
Thank you, I have no further questions.
I see that my learned friend has spoken about mental illness within the prison system. I would like to oppose her statement, and to do so, may I call Van Ginneken to the stand?
Granted.
Miss Van Ginneken, can you please explain to the jury what you have learned about psychological adjustment of mental ill patients entering the prison system?
I found that, contrary to many belief systems about mental states deteriorating in prison, many prisoners actually turn prison into something positive, such as learning new skills which will be useful to them when they are released.
And is there a next step you'd like to take with your research to improve it?
Yes, my research was based on UK prisons, and I truly believe that those systems should be replicated elsewhere, as systems outside the UK or private systems tend not to be as successful.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
You state that, individually, prisons are not responsible for the health care of prisoners. Could you elaborate on this?
Responsibility of prison healthcare was handed over from the prison service to the NHS, which heralded significant developments in prison mental health and substance misuse services.
How does the healthcare policy differ for inmates and non-prisoners?
The current prison healthcare policy asserts that prisoners are entitled to the same range and standard of healthcare as that received by the general population in community settings.
Do you feel this is a successful policy, specifically for those with mental illness?
Whilst this may seem positive in theory, in practice the results are less so. Due to the high population of people with serious mental illnesses, SMIs, in prison, and this number being ever increasing, paired with the anti-therapeutic prison environment, the mental states of inmates with SMIs have been found to worsen.
Is there any more evidence to substantiate this?
Matakowski and Osterman's paper, Serious Mental Illnesses, Criminal Risk, Parole Supervision and Recidivism, Testing of Conditional Effects, found that inmates with SMIs were more likely to reoffend more quickly and at higher rates than those without an SMI. Therefore, prison itself worsens mental health for those with a known illness.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
I would like to contradict this, and to do so, I call upon a representative from the National Institute of Health Research. What aspects of their illness did you analyse in your interviews?
At the interviews, the Schedule for Affective Disorders and Schizophrenia, SADS, by Endicott and Spitzer, 1978, was used to diagnose mental illness. On the basis of their SADS diagnosis, prisoners were assigned to one of 4 mutually exclusive diagnostic groups: any psychosis, major depressive disorder, other mental illnesses, and no mental illness. Psychiatric symptoms were monitored using the Brief Psychiatric Rating Scale and the General Health Questionnaire 12, GHQ, by Goldberg, 1976.
And what were the results you found from this interview?
This large-scale analysis of mental health in the prison system found that in the majority of cases, prison is not detrimental to mental health. They found no evidence for a correlation between incarceration and deterioration in mental health. They found that in 91% of cases, those in prison with a mental health diagnosis received some form of treatment.
Thank you. Your Honour, I have no further questions.
I would like to add one final piece of evidence.
Granted.
Morgan v. Lewis states, and I quote, "A prison must confine inmates. This is the fundamental function of a prison. And by its very nature, it generates a social situation that is punishing to most inmates and is characterised by continuous, but usually latent, conflict between inmates and staff." The paper poses the question, can rehabilitation take place under these conditions? This is an important question to consider. In a situation such as this, surely there is no real opportunity for an inmate to be successfully rehabilitated. In fact, this paper concludes that rehabilitation programmes, such as education-focused programmes, have little, if any, post-prison effect, and that while communication requires cooperation from inmates, they do not cooperate. They merely comply, showing no genuine change from their post-prison ways. Thank you.
Does the defence have any reply to this?
We do not.
Thank you. We will now end the proceedings with the closing statements. Can we start with the defence?
As we've heard today, there are many positive witnesses who have given research to support that rehabilitation can and does occur in prisons. In many ways, it is clear that the prison system is important and working, both for the safety of the general public and also those put into a situation where they can receive the support and help they need. This is incredibly important because without these opportunities, it could lead to a huge rise in crime risk in the UK.
And the prosecution?
Surely, after hearing all of the evidence, it is clear that there are issues within the prison system. Do you not think that a question like this can be answered by saying that nothing is perfect? We are all aware of this fact. At this time, there is no leniency in the process of making a decision. As His Honour has mentioned, this is a pivotal case. Do you not feel the need to shy away from being a part of such an immense event? Feel pride in being part of a change for the better. Please consider, without prejudice, all of the information provided for you. I hope that tradition does not influence your decision, as the evidence shows that tradition is not always a successful approach.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've been brought forward to decide the verdict for the current prison system. Both sides have argued unabatedly throughout the proceedings. Many witnesses have been brought to the stand, and opposition to each and every point has been fierce throughout. Rightly so. This is no ordinary trial. This will decide how justice is dealt in future and how the prison system is to remain. I ask for you to put personal prejudices aside and base your decision squarely on the evidence you have seen here today. I will now ask for the jury to vote on the proceedings.